What is up, everybody? But with the release of Terrifier 3 that is absolutely kicking ass this weekend, we now have 4 films within the Art the Clown universe, and I finally want to rank these bitches. So I have already done a spoiler-free review of Terrifier 3. I have done a full spoiler recap discussion that's also on my channel. Now it's time to talk about all 4 of them, put them in order from my least favorite to my favorite, and talk about what I enjoy about all 4 of these films and get your opinions down in the comment section below. And with that said, let's not clown around any longer and get right into the ranking. So number 4 coming in at the bottom for me is going to be All Hallows Eve. Now, some of you might not even recognize this film or even be aware that it is in the Art the Clown universe. This is actually where the character of Art the Clown got his start and where Damien Leone got his start as a filmmaker. So Damien created a few horror shorts, one of which was called The Ninth Circle. The other one was based on the Art the Clown character, and it was called Terrifier. And so a producer eventually got a hold of these shorts that was on YouTube for a year or so and contacted Damien and wanted to put together an anthology film that I believe was going to release straight to DVD. And so they shot a little bit of extra footage to make Art the Clown the star and the poster child of this film, make him kind of the book-ending story segment. And so you have an anthology film here that was 3 stories, 2 of which aren't necessarily focused on Art the Clown. The third one is. And Art was actually played by a completely different actor that retired from acting right before they went to make the first official Terrifier film, hence the recasting of David Howard Thornton. So those of you that like Damien's style, that you like the Terrifier vibe, especially the vibe of the first film, a lot more raw and grindhousey, you'll probably dig this movie. I'm just somebody that's not much for horror anthologies. I have a very low hit ratio with a lot of them. Most times when I watch them, there's usually only about 25% or so of the segments that really I get into, and that's kind of the case for this one. The Terrifier segment is the one that I enjoyed the most. Now, what I will tell you is that in All Hallows Eve, for a lot of you that have been shocked and have been biting your nails wondering if they're going to go there in Terrifier 3, well, they already kind of went there in All Hallows Eve. This thing goes for it. There is a lot of things that is just wild, absolutely depraved, and it definitely gave you a taste of things to come for the Terrifier franchise. So if you have never seen it, if you dig horror anthologies, I recommend you check it out. It is interesting to see kind of the beginnings of Damien Leone, the beginnings of his special effects work, the beginning of Art the Clown, what he used to look like, what the actor who portrayed him was going for in the initial version of the character. It's an interesting little time capsule. Just not being an anthology guy, it's the one that I enjoy the least. Now, really quick before we move on to our top 3, a quick word from our sponsor, me! That is right, people. My official merch store has been relaunched, rebranded, rejuvenated, brought back from the depths of hell. We got all new designs. We got a couple of them that are rejuvenated classics that I'm sure you guys love. The Autop Stream design, a variation of my channel logo. We got a sexy one for all of you fellow Nightmare on Elm Street fans.
Get you some merch, bitch.
Here's Cody. Oh, hell yes. You know you want it, boy. And as of right now, we're keeping it simple. We've got t-shirts, we got tank tops, we got hoodies, and we have hats. There's variations on the different designs for the hats especially. We have sizes all the way up to 4XL, I believe maybe even 5XL in the hoodies. And I do recommend if you're getting a hoodie, get one size larger than your typical shirt size. But I usually like my hoodies to be a little oversized, so that's just my preference. And as time goes on, we'll add more designs. We'll have things coinciding with big video releases like some 31 on 31 themes probably. We'll have special little promo codes here and there. If you're a Patreon of mine, you already have a 10% discount. That is permanent. That is one of the perks that is exclusive to you beautiful people. And the best part about it, all of this beautiful shit ships worldwide. So anywhere in the planet Earth, if you are a fan of mine and you want to check out some of this sexy ass shit and get some for yourself, it will be delivered right to your door, no matter where you are in the world. And obviously, yes, by purchasing this merch, you are supporting this channel in a financial way. So I appreciate all of that. But all of you guys that do actually buy some of this, be sure to tag me in a picture on social media or send it to me in a DM, something, because I'd love to show this stuff off in the future. And with that being said, let's get back to talking Terrifier. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the original Terrifier. And I have an interesting relationship with this film because I still remember when this thing came out, made a big splash in the horror community. Everybody was talking about it. And so I checked it out out of pure morbid curiosity, had no idea what to expect. And I remember just being floored at the gore. It was just like, holy shit, this is a slasher movie that ain't fucking around. And so I really dug it on that first watch. Upon second watch, after the initial shock value of a lot of the special effects kind of wore off of me, I found myself being a little bit underwhelmed with it as far as story and characters. And so I watched it a third time in 2022. That's when I actually dropped my official review for it. And that's when I was just a couple of weeks away from walking into the premiere of Terrifier 2 at Fantastic Fest that year. And it was a movie that I'm just kind of in the middle on. I've always kind of been in the middle on it. There's things that I love about it. I think that Art the Clown and David Howard Thornton's performance is absolutely the standout there, as it was intended to be. Damien Leone's practical special effects work is on full display. And so I've always felt like this movie is more of a proof of concept, more so than an actual film. And I think that that's exactly what it was intended to be. It was something to say, hey, this is Art the Clown. This is what Damien Leone can do if you give him the money. Do you guys want to see more in this world? Do you want this character? Are you digging what we're going for here? And obviously, a large chunk of the horror fan base said, hell yes, give us more. So it's a movie that now, when I watched it for the fourth time last night in preparation for this ranking, it's a film that I actually have started to respect a lot more, and I started to enjoy certain aspects of it more because of now being able to see the things that were set up that are eventually paid off in the second and even the third film. As light as it is on story, there's things that are set up here with the Victoria character, with the woman that gets, her chest skinned off, that I believe is supposed to be the mother of the girl that's eventually the pale-eyed girl. There's certain things in here that is just cool little almost Easter eggs for fans of the further films. So I still feel like it's a movie that I wouldn't revisit near as often as the two that are going to inevitably be above it. It's something I would have to be in a Terrifier mood for, or doing a binge of the franchise, or just be in a super grindhouse gore fest mood, which certainly that mood strikes every once in a while. It's a film that I respect more than I enjoy. But with my fandom of the second and third film, I find myself respecting it a lot more than I used to. A lot of people prefer this one because it's just the most simple, straightforward. It's just Art the Clown laying waste to a bunch of people. A lot of really old school grindhouse vibe with the look of the film, the color palette, and of course the kills and the special effects. It has that kind of down and dirty and grungy feel to it that I think a lot of people just loved this franchise and loved this character for, that the ones that love the original film, that's what they hold sacred to. So I'm not necessarily one of those people, but this is a movie that has its fan base as being the best of this franchise because it does stand out as a very unique film amongst the now 4 films we have with this character. And now we move on to our top 2, and I gotta be honest with you, this is tough. The next 2 films, I genuinely feel like they're neck and neck for me for very different reasons. I think they both have very different strengths. I think they both have very different shortcomings. I think that there is going to be one of those situations where you ask me today and I pick a favorite, you ask me tomorrow and those favorites will change. I walked out of Terrifier 3 thinking, oh, this was great, but I definitely prefer the second one. And then when I saw it the second time on opening night with a crowd of people in the double feature, I walked out going, fuck, I don't know. That's really close. Like, after watching them back to back, I'm like, goddamn, there's things that I love these movies for, and I don't know if I can pick a favorite. But with the nature of rankings, I got to plant my flag somewhere. So while it is difficult, and while this answer will almost certainly change in the future whenever we revisit this franchise for Terrifier 4 and onward, my number 2, as of today, is Terrifier 3. Now, what I love about this movie is that, to me, it was the perfect balance between the tone, the approach, and the strengths of the first 2 films. You had Damien that made a very conscious decision to not propel things even further into the fantastical and the poppy and the crazy that we got into with Terrifier 2, and tried to pull that back a little bit. He didn't pull it back near as much as I thought he was going to, which is another reason why I just really enjoyed this film, because I actually like all the wild directions we got in Terrifier 2, and we'll get into that shortly. But I do feel a genuine effort to bring it back down a bit, to make it a little meaner, to make it a little darker, to have Art the Clown doing his thing throughout more of the film. Like, only every 8 or 9 minutes go by between a kill set piece in this film, it feels like. but you still get a lot of the lore expansion. You still get a lot of the furthering of that story. So you have Sienna here that is a broken person, that is a damaged and unhinged person, which is a storyline that I was a little worried about because that's bordering on being a trope for Final Girls, is after the initial traumatizing event, they go through their trauma stage. But I loved what they did here to really dive further into that than most movies do, where she's totally unhinged. She's starting to have this distant relationship with her brother, and her brother's responding to the trauma in a very different way. And for the mean streak side of it, you have Art the Clown and Vicky that just absolutely decimate this girl's life down to its core. And so where usually you get these final girls that get their revenge chapter when they're in their trauma stage, where they get to rise up, they get to save the day, they get to prevent a lot of carnage. They basically put Sienna through 3 times as much hell as she was in Terrifier 2, and see where she comes out the other end after that. And then when you get to the third act showdown, she's a lot more vengeful, a lot more angry, and you get to see Lauren Lavera cut her teeth a bit more into the character, which was great to see. And then just Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton, I think this is easily his best run as Art the Clown. And he's one of those character and actor mashups where you saw what he did in Terrifier 2, and I genuinely walked out thinking, okay, I think you've reached the max of what we can do with that character. We're going to get more, obviously, but I don't know how much further he's going to be able to take both sides of that character, the sinister and the silly side of it. And I was wrong, because you walk into Terrifier 3 and you get scenes like when he meets Santa Claus and the whole theater is just laughing their ass off at just silent facial expressions and physical acting by David. And he propels this character into an even darker and meaner place and an even lighter and funnier place within the same movie, within the same performance. So absolutely loved what he did with Art the Clown here. The Christmas aesthetic, I absolutely loved how they went for a vintage Christmas. They're kind of going for that, not necessarily Black Christmas, more like a Silent Night, Deadly Night vibe, like late 80s, early 90s look to it, which kind of has its own griminess and has its own version of nostalgia in there. And it's a movie that, story-wise, I feel like answers just enough questions that were left lingering from 2 while still leaving a few question marks for us to whet our appetites for the further films. And the answers that we did get, I really enjoyed. Explanation of what's going on with Vicky, explanation of what exactly is the end goal here, what is Art's deal, what is he trying to do, or what is something trying to do with Art, how does Sienna fit into all of that. The answers that we give, I really dig where things are going. They go in a very mythological, borderline biblical direction that I wasn't expecting. And I just think it brings a really interesting dynamic to these movies that certainly didn't start out feeling like it was going to go that way and have now just evolved into this wild, crazy extravaganza that I'm really a fan of. And of course, the kills in this movie, I mean, they are just way crazier and gnarlier than they have been in the past, as far as every single person that falls victim to Art or Vicky are literally their own set piece. Like, there's very few quick kills in this movie. You get a couple of them, but for the most part, everybody that has a kill, it is a kill sequence. It is multiple things. It is a ton of practical effects. And I actually think I misspoke in my review. I think I credited Damien solely for the special effects in this film because he's always done all of it himself. He actually went out and got Tinsley Studio, who previously worked on films like Passion of the Christ and I think American Horror Story, a few TV shows, to come in and do the special effects work. So I definitely misspoke there. Damien, I'm sure, still got his hands into the blood a bit, but he offloaded that work to somebody that has done incredible work in the past, and that allowed him to really free himself up to work more with his actors. So not only do we get incredible special effects, incredible practical gore here, like literally the standard of the slasher genre right now, in my opinion, but you notice a genuine raise in quality of the overall acting and the performances of the entire cast, of the work that went into the cinematography and setting up different shots. Like, it freed up Damien to be more of a director in this third film and offload a lot of the things that he used to do, like the editing and the special effects work and the sound design, to these professional people. And I think you see a genuine incline in quality for the overall filmmaking in this third film. So while they got a higher budget, they stayed out of the studio system, but you get to see what more resources can do to even a low-budget independent franchise like this. Really, the only two issues that I had with this film is that I wish that Jonathan had a little bit bigger of a role. He gets sidelined very heavily in this film, and I don't know if that was an intentional story choice. I don't know if that was a scheduling thing with Elliot Fulham. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to come back in Terrifier 4 and eventually be paid off. And there was this podcast character that I felt like was turned up a bit too much to be more of a caricature than a character, and it only stood out so much because, as I said, the overall acting quality of everybody in the cast had been raised so much that a character like that just stood out quite a bit more than she would have in like Terrifier 2 or the original Terrifier. So I really enjoyed this movie. I've seen it twice now, and I genuinely have the itch to go watch it again, and that is a rarity for me. I can count maybe 3 films my entire life that I've gone to the theater to see 3 times, and Terrifier 3 might be another one. So as I said, you ask me in a couple of days, you ask me tomorrow, you ask me by the time I'm sitting down to edit this movie, this one might shift into number 1. I enjoy it that much. But for right now, there's another movie that I feel like I love just a teensy bit more. And coming in at number 1 is going to be Terrifier 2. And this movie just surprised the living hell out of me. I don't want to say I expected not to like it, because that wasn't exactly the story, but being somebody who was, you know, in the middle, not necessarily lukewarm, but not won over completely by the first Terrifier film, I walked into Terrifier 2 only knowing the runtime. You know, the expansion of Terrifier, but it's now almost 2.5 hours long. And so that was really the emotion walking in, is like, what is a 2-hour and 20-minute Terrifier film going to be? This sounds like it might be exhausting. And I sat down to watch this at Fantastic Fest in 2022. And when I walked out of this thing after experiencing this insanity in a crazy festival slasher fan filled crowd at midnight, it was genuinely one of the best theater experiences I've ever had. And I walked out going, damn, I loved that. That's what I'm talking about. That is what I want. Fuck yes, let's go. It basically answered pretty much all of the issues that I have with the first film. There's much more of a focus on story here. There's a lot more built-in lore and exploring some fantastical and supernatural elements in there regarding the resurrection of Art and the introduced final girl here in Sienna, which is probably the best addition to the second film for sure, because the first film feels like it's really devoid of a protagonist. We get kind of a surprise twist where you shift focus to a different character about halfway through, but at no point did either of the main characters feel like a final girl. And so with the introduction of Sienna, with the introduction of the acting caliber that Lauren Levera brings to it, it just raised the whole franchise up to this next echelon. And so you get this wild and crazy character of Art the Clown, which David Howard Thornton expands that character and what he can do with that character so much in this second film. You get this counterbalance with Sienna, this badass, hard-edged, and very sympathetic final girl that's trying to protect her family, trying to protect eventually her little brother especially, and yet they have like this iconic Valkyrie look to her. Like, it's just so off the wall, balls out crazy that I'm glad I never watched a trailer or read anything about this film before I watched it, because that just the initial shock of how crazy they were going, I just absolutely loved. And so this is a film that I have now seen 3 times in theaters, and I love the score to it. I love just the journey we go on. All of the carnage and the kills here is awesome. That bedroom scene to me is still the one to beat for this franchise. You got some people that say the hacksaw scene. You got some people that now say the shower scene in Terrifier 3. I remember watching that bedroom scene with Sean Chandler sitting next to me with a belly full of Mexican street corn popcorn. And I'm watching this kill scene go on for what seemed like 15 minutes on the first viewing. And I'm just like, God damn, he's still going. And in my peripherals, I just see movement. And so I look away from the screen for a second and I just see Sean going. That reaction, that emotional reaction, that hilarious comedic reaction that I get from seeing Sean's reaction in the theater for the first time will stay with me forever. And I will always remember it and think about it when I rewatch this film. It's just such a blast of a movie, honestly. Like, this is a movie that came out of nowhere for me. It instantly made me a fan of this franchise. It made me a fan of what these guys are doing. It made me root for them, cheer for them, want everything to continue going forward. And with the projected box office of just the first weekend of Terrifier 3, oh, it's going that way like a motherfucker. So this is one that's just very special to me. Any issues that I have with it are really, most of them are rectified by the third film. I was a little frustrated at how many lingering questions we had by the end of that film. Now that we've got the answer to many of them, that goes away. That was a temporary negative. I still feel like the film's a little long. I don't necessarily ever pick out specific scenes or sequences that could be cut or shortened necessarily. The last time I watched it, I kind of looked for it. But it is a epic-sized, like, director's cut, Zack Snyder-style version of Terrifier 2. And so when you get to the third act, I do usually feel a tiny bit of exhaustion of just experiencing this for almost 2.5 hours, but it's not bad. You know, it's not something that kills the experience for me, and it's something that the movie, the name of the game is excess. Like, that's the word that if I had to give one word to describe Terrifier 2 to cover everything in it, it's just excess. And so it kind of fits that epic second chapter there. So absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorite slasher films of all time, genuinely. And I just love seeing where they're continuing to go and continue to expand this story. So as of right now, it's my number one. If they continue on this trajectory, it might be dethroned eventually. But time will tell. Time will tell if Terrifier 3 eventually comes in number one. And when we eventually get Terrifier 4, maybe a Terrifier 5, we'll see where the chips fall. But man, it's a good time to be a Terrifier fan. It's a good time to be a slasher fan. It's a good time to be a clown fan. Pennywise, move over, bitch. It's Art's turn. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my Terrifier 3 spoiler recap and review up here for you to check out. Please like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. Get yourself some merch with the link down in the video description below. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.